going to be on design thinking. I believe I put into the chat the bit.ly for today's presentation, so feel free to access that. It's an updated version similar to what you'll probably access in the OCLA spreadsheet, but I went ahead and just posted it again in the comments. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to begin presenting my screen so that way obviously you guys can see what's going on, but in that sense I won't necessarily get to see you guys visually, but we have the amazing Omar here to help kind of, you know, moderate and make sure that, you know, everybody's questions are getting answered, or pausing me, I guess, to see if there are questions. And then definitely if we get done at, you know, sooner than 10:40, we can go ahead and have some Q&A right in real life. So I'm going to go ahead and begin presenting. And so I welcome you all today. It's a lovely Saturday. Sure, there we go. Okay, so today is a session on design thinking, and I really call it the grand learning experience. Omar, can you just give me like a yes if you can see my screen well?
I cannot see your screen.
Oh, you can't. Oh, that's because I haven't clicked on anything yet. That's why. Now we can see probably.
Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so again, design thinking, the grand learning experience, and when you have access to this slide deck, a lot of the images are going to be hyperlinked, meaning that you'll get to have other resources based off of the topics that we'll be talking about based around design thinking. And so before we get started, it's always nice to go ahead and do kind of an icebreaker or a check-in. So first off, in the chat bar, love to introduce yourselves, your name, your location, and your position. And there's also opportunity for you to partake in a Mentimeter. So suggestion would be to go into another tab and Google Mentimeter. And then include this code. So I'll go ahead and give us about like 5 minutes to partake in that activity, which then I'll go back and kind of look through the comments and do like little shout outs. And then I will make sure that I get some music going on in the background over here. Recently, we did a staff meeting at my school site, and we were focusing around vacation. So I got some Hawaiian music here in the background we'll mess around with. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then I'll put the Mentimeter information also in the chat bar. So you can access this here. So the question on Mentimeter is, who has been an influential mentor to you? And obviously we're here today because we are influential mentors to our students, to our staff, and so obviously we've been inspired somebody. Let's go ahead and share that out. I see we have people from Anaheim. Hello. We have Ventura County, Rancho Mission Viejo, teaching SPED, which is dear to my heart. I'm very much so a advocate for inclusion. We have Fontana, which is close to me. I'm in Romaland, so I mean, many people don't know where Romaland is, but we're near the Fontana area too. Santa Clarita, we have Atosa, nice. That was my previous profession recently. And now I have changed, as we have all really changed our professions this school year within our distance learning and virtual learning. Oh, your grandson is in Romaland. Awesome, Mrs. Dane. Are they in school still, or now are they the adults now? Or no, grandson. So I wonder what school that they go to. That's very cool. Nancy from Roland Unified. Christy from Orange USD. Everybody enjoyed the opening keynote this morning? Thumbs up. Nice. Oh my gosh, somebody from Florida. That's awesome. Which really makes sense because we have OCQ in the house, and their logo encompasses an orange. And when I think about Florida, I think about oranges and orange juice. So hey, there's a connection. So as we're doing this Mentimeter, I can go ahead and present my screen really quick to show what some of our results are if we have anybody that's went ahead and put in anything in the Mentimeter. Wow, so we have teachers, Midnight Pedagogy Group, yeah. Previous teachers, our mothers, RBG, yes, obviously we have lost one of the greats, and so that was a great reference. We have lots of, we have principals and coaches, co-teachers, professors, amazing. And I will tell you that Mentimeter is really a great tool if you haven't used it with your class or even your staff, whatever position that you're in, as a way to gather live data and collect feedback, collect responses. And it's just really fun that people are able to see in real time what people are thinking or feeling. And so a really great tool to use within our virtual classrooms. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause on our introductions to each other, and I'm going to go ahead and get into our session just for the sake of time because we're at 9:46, and I will begin presenting. Okay, so welcome again. My name is Heather Hilz Fitzgerald. I am an assistant principal at Boulder Ridge Elementary within the Romaland School District. And many of you are probably like, where is Romaland? Like I said, well, Romaland is in Riverside County. We're really nestled next to, almost like a Temecula, Menifee, Hemet, Moreno Valley kind of area. So we're very small. We have 5 schools, 4 of them elementaries, 1 of them being a middle school. I also have just recently taken on the role as an IAQ board member. Previously was an IAQ committee member, but very passionate about Q. And obviously it's definitely inspired me as an educator throughout the years. And so I'm so happy to be here today with all of you. And today what we're going to be talking about is something that's really near and dear to my heart when it comes to pedagogy, and that is using design thinking in the classroom as a way to instruct our students. And I apologize, my dog is in the background. I'll be right back. Hold on. This is Tater Tot, so maybe she'll just have to be with us during this session today. So I'm going to go ahead and present so you can see my full screen. And again, like I said, design thinking is something that I'm very passionate about. And especially when we went into closures in March, it was something that was really a big focus for me. Last year, I had a position as an educational technology coach within our district. And when we went into closures, one of the big things that we needed to do to transition to make sure that we had students accessing their learning was also to give them paper-based options besides just the tech that we were able to provide. We were able to provide technology to all of the homes, not yet one-to-one, but we were able to give most families all one Chromebook. So then, yes, we had to go ahead and accommodate with some packet-based options. So as we were creating these packets, I wanted to be able to link into like something that was a little bit more engaging, something that was a little bit more worldly. And so instead of just focusing on worksheets that were going to hone in on just rote memorization skills, I wanted to be able to provide students with kind of this cross-curricular approach, this engaging approach that would allow them to really dive into their learning in a different way. So design thinking is obviously found in many different avenues in the world and different occupations, but it really allows for your students to be able to go ahead and be exposed to really high DOK level type thinking, which is using researching skills, collaboration skills, brainstorming, and then creating solutions for the future, which we know is a very vital and very important part of our society today. So how was I inspired? Well, I was actually inspired at a previous Google camp a few years back within our Riverside County area. It actually took place at a Paris Elementary, and it was a really great event. And one of the sessions that I attended there, I was exposed to a game called Extraordinaires, and you can actually go ahead on Amazon and look it up. This is the almost like the game package here. It looks different from the package that I had previously bought in years ago, but it really is just a really great tool for students to bring into the classroom where they can analyze characters, begin to empathize with characters based off of their story, and then go ahead and design things that they think that would be beneficial for them. Whether those things would be a vehicle, maybe those things would be tools, maybe it was a clothing item. And so that used to be a very big part of my classroom, especially towards the end of the school year when we were focusing on state testing, that we would dive into this design thinking process where students could be creative and they could be pretty much game changers in their own learning by developing their own research and creating things that were absolutely fabulous. From there, obviously, there were other things that inspired me when it came to design thinking. When we think about our sustainable goals, and you see a lot of educators incorporating those kinds of topics in their classroom, I thought that this would then lend itself to exposing students to real life problems and situations within the world that they can go ahead and develop brainstorms and then possibly ideating possible prototypes to help support some of these issues that we have worldwide. And again, like I said previously, in your slide deck, all of these are hyperlinked. And this actually down here, this enrichment project, is something that you could take away and use in your classroom on Monday. I created it for a middle school a group of teachers that were trying to give something almost like an enrichment extension like activity once they were done finishing some of their advanced coursework. And so feel free to use that and modify it as you need for your classroom. I'm also really inspired by a recent read in the last few months by Lindsay Portnoy, which is Design to Learn. And I really do recommend this as some literature that you access soon as you want to begin to develop your distance learning and or virtual learning classroom. And so this will really take you through all the different steps of design thinking and give you really great ideas of how to assess students, how to really set up like an entire unit around design thinking. So again, those are some inspirational things that you can also check out. And so, like I said, I was inspired, so then it really then translated to my classroom. So this is my classroom a few years back. I don't want to click on this, but this will take you to, I believe, the Twitter post, and it has students actually discussing about their projects that they created. And so this was the UDL and what is the best type of learning experience for students. But really, I was just so surprised to see the amazing things that these students were able to come up with and how they were able to connect to characters to make sure that they were being provided with things that would benefit them in the future. So again, what is design thinking? And so I really hate having to like read directly off my slide, but I really love this quote from Tim Brown. He's the CEO of IDEO. And it really just encompasses design thinking is the human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. So I think design thinking is over encompassing of everything that takes place within our lives. And we know that we are a society that enjoys being able to have things purchased, right? We like to consume things. We also like to make sure that we're finding that pursuit of happiness. And we're also trying to find solutions to problems within the world so that we can try to make this a better life for every individual on Earth. And so that is what design thinking is. And so when you're really structuring an entire unit in your classroom around design thinking, you're really giving opportunities for your students to be a part of a bigger process of their education. So these are the steps of design thinking. They're the basic steps. The first one is obviously empathize. So, presenting a problem or a situation to students where they can actually feel connected to what the situation is. And then from there, that allows them to research and understand why that problem exists or what that challenge is. And then the really fun part is where they get to be creative and ideate and brainstorm and come up with all of these amazing ideas that they think that will potentially help solve your issue. And then obviously back into our idea of like project-based learning and hands-on type of activities, we can go ahead and provide opportunities for our students to develop prototypes that they can eventually present to one another, share, and then again, test out to make sure, is this going to be a relevant product? Is this going to be a relevant solution to what's going on with my design thinking unit? So, in the sense of the story I told you at the beginning, as we were in closures within March and how my coaching team was, pretty much put up to the task to create packet-based options for families who possibly did not have access to internet at that time and or some type of technology. And my role at that time was to develop social studies content. And I am definitely, again, a very I definitely believe in cross-curricular approaches within the classroom. So a lot of times my classroom was very much more thematic based in the sense of science and social studies were the core of what we were going to be learning about. And then obviously infusing our comprehension strategies, our reading strategies, mathematical concepts and procedures within those thematic units. And so what I wanted to be able to do to provide to these students was something that was a little bit more beefy, a little bit more relevant, and something that was interesting. Rather than just plugging in some random rote memorization worksheet, I wanted them to go through a creative process while they were quarantined at home. And like I said, everything's hyperlinked in here. So these are my actual shared folders. I have kinder through 8th grade created design thinking pretty much like mini units. And obviously they're in like a kind of a paper format right now, but you could definitely translate that into a digital format, whether you use Google Docs, Google Slides as a hyperlink approach, but these could definitely also be translated within platforms such as Pear Deck, Nearpod, and etc. So moving on, I'm actually going to go ahead and show each of these. So my screen might be a little bit smaller at this point to go in and look at these, but I want to just show you what it looks like in the sense of what the structure of each of the steps for design thinking looks like. At this point, wait, are there any questions? I'm going to pause for a second. Mr. Omar, is there any questions that you're noticing?
Not at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if I'm going into my design thinking process, and this is the first process, and we're calling this empathize, you'll notice that I definitely lean towards using a literature-based approach at first to get students exposed to whatever the type of issue is that we are trying to design a solution for. And so this is directly taken from a Newsella article, which is something that I am deeply connected to in the sense of that was what drove a lot of my instruction within the classroom was Newsela, because it was relevant information, obviously user-friendly for students because it has the benefits of annotation tools. Obviously, you can support it with different Lexile levels as well. And so the first step was for me to find some type of a topic that I thought was going to be, at that point, inspiring to students. And so if you notice, I did, at this point, I think this 1 week was really inspired around the coronavirus and just having students understand what was going on during that process, because a lot of students may had just questions and concerns. And so this was a way for them to understand relevant information in the moment together. And so they would read. And my suggestion, obviously, during this time, if you were doing this within your virtual classroom, this would be something that you would do as a guided read for sure, a guided close read. So students would be asked to read with you, annotate, take notes, and then at the end, this is where we would really go ahead and connect that idea of empathizing as to who is in the article and what matters to them. And that is really a relevant question at this point for students, because a lot of times when you're looking at our standard curriculums, you have McGraw-Hill, you have Houghton Mifflin, and you have your reads each week, and the types of questions that are formulated around them, may not be as personal to your students, because it's not really asking them this open-ended question of what matters to them. So I think evoking that opportunity to our students is an opportunity to be able to make them think outside the box and make the learning a little bit more relevant to what they actually want to learn about. So again, empathize is your first step. And again, at this point too, I really think it would be important, because you've been with your students probably for maybe a month or a few weeks. You could even ask your students what they are interested in learning about, because you want to make sure that topic is something that they're going to be motivated to be a part of for the entire unit. And I also really advocate for the idea of making things accessible to students. So making sure that if for some reason this article isn't accessible to students based on maybe they are students with disabilities, maybe they're English learners. So making sure that there's options for them to be able to interact with this article, whether it's inspired by a video snippet and or it's a screen recorded castify of yourself reading the article too. Okay, so once we have empathized, once we have made a connection to our topic, I don't want to do that, I want to present still. We then move into, I thought I was going to go into defining, but we move into being able to dig deeper. So this is actually where I want to make mention that when you're doing this design thinking unit, it's not just like brushing over the steps and really always just having a non-structured type of educational approach, but there's so many times that you can go ahead and after that article that's being read, take moment in time for a week or multiple weeks to apply comprehension strategies to that article that you have read. So these are all, I believe, available to you in the slide deck. Once you're not in like a presentation mode at this point, you can always go and drag these once you've made this presentation a copy for yourself, and you can place them into either a Google Doc. I'm more of a Google Slides person. I feel like it can manipulate things a lot better that way. And then utilize this as digital graphic organizers for your students. And then obviously we always have EduProtocols at hand. If you don't have EduProtocols book 1 or book 2, I highly suggest also purchasing those, because those are going to be great pedagogical shifts in your classroom, and they translate so well within our distance learning realm right now. But you'll notice too, like right here, like my comprehension strategies, right? That's like language arts. So, you know, that's top heavy in language arts. But what's great about EduProtocols is you're able to then kind of go outside of the box of where we're always so ELA heavy, but you can also incorporate mathematical approaches too, such as number mania data collection forms, which I think are really great to utilize during a Newsella article, because Newsella articles are informational articles, and you're gonna have a lot of statistics, you're gonna have a lot of numbers, you're gonna have a lot of data involved in that article. So you're showing students that math is not just this separate entity where we're doing like random word problems and equations, but actually math is integrated into everyday life, and that's why we need to know our concepts and procedures in order to be able to do math in real life. Again, I believe these are hyperlinked too. They're going to be just separate hyperlinks. I haven't in the past made previous folders with all of those as an EduProtocols folder, but I don't think I included it here for sure. Mr. Omar, any questions or anything?
No, just a lot of support and appreciation of the language around using EduProtocols and accessibility.
Perfect. Yes, I completely agree. And for myself, stepping out of the coaching role, which one of the things that I really championed for last year was the usage of EduProtocols, because it really does kind of push educators to use comprehension strategies in a different way. And so even for myself this year, stepping into a new role as an administrator, it makes me like take a little mental note right now, like, hey, like I need to do an informational session with my staff again, and a reminder of EduProtocols, just so that we're remembering that those are really great strategies to be using in our classroom. So, okay, we are now going to get into the define mode. Define is really going to be that academic approach of research. And so after your students have gone in, read the article, and I always suggest to do multiple reads on the article. You could always do jigsaw reads with students. You could do peer reads with one another as well, just so that they're really understanding what the meaning is and what all the key details are of the problem or the situation that we're dealing with, that we're trying to find some type of a solution to. After that, this is an opportunity for students to go ahead and describe what the problem is specifically. They are going to generate a problem statement. My suggestion, especially for the littles, is to generate a problem statement that is within a sentence frame. And I will mention too, now that I said the littles, because in that binder that has all of the design thinking from K through 8th, you'll notice that K through, I believe, 2nd grade has a much more littles type friendly format to it. So know that this may be overwhelming for, obviously your first graders, but in that folder, there's going to be something that's a little bit more modified for the younger grades. And then from there, obviously just filling out graphic organizer, which we love graphic organizers. It really helps lead students to their thinking by giving them these open-ended questions. I think this also could be a great approach to establishing group projects within the virtual learning world, so that students aren't alone on this journey trying to generate what they are finding from the article and their information. This is also a really great opportunity for students to possibly have one part of their day to go ahead and find more information about the problem, whether they're using Google as a way to determine some more resources and or any other applications that your districts or schools provide you with that give you sources to informational like content. Once they go ahead and really hone into what those problems are, and then deciding, what are the other things that they're going to need to know about the problem, they can trickle down these ideas and begin to start ideating what the needs are specifically for these individuals. And so I give them 3 options to talk about the needs, like What are these people going to need to survive? What are these people going to need to be happy? How are we going to change this situation? And this is a great time for maybe using Google Jamboard as a way for students to collaborate and share what the needs are that they thought of. Or obviously Mentimeter is a great way to put that in real time too. So moving on, after they've done that really difficult research work, which is actually going to be, the foundation of their unit, they get to go to the fun part, the parts that they get to be creative in. And so this is the opportunity for them to spew out all of the ideas that they think would really help solve the issue at hand. And really, this is probably my favorite part during the entire design thinking process, because you get to see how unique each child thinks and the great possibilities that they're able to create. So this is probably the fun, juicy part of design thinking. And I will say, based on previous times of doing design thinking in my own classroom, at times, students do have that confidence level that's a little low, especially at the beginning of the year. They're not able to really share out their ideas without feeling like, ooh, is somebody going to judge me? Or is that a really good idea? This is the time that you have to tell your students that there are no right or wrong answers. This is how people change things in the world, by having maybe that crazy idea. And so maybe this could be an opportunity for a modeled experience with you and your students. So you as a teacher really showing the think aloud process for yourself based on the problem, based on your empathy to the problem, and then thinking, well, if I know that people are unhappy with staying at home, being quarantined, what can I do to create some happiness? And we know back when we were quarantined, I remember one really great idea that I saw from kids coming across the United States and the whole world is them creating lovely, beautiful, happy pictures and placing them inside of the windows so that people could kind of have that spark of joy. So just, giving them real world ideas and or just showing how you're not scared to also come up with these grand ideas yourself. After that, after they, get all of their lovely thinkings on that brainstorm cloud, this is where you're going to really have to ask them to narrow it down. And it may be difficult. It may be difficult for them to narrow those down, but they do need to eventually come up with their top 3. And I always thought that this was the best opportunity for us to pause as a group as well in the classroom and have students share out loud their top 3, almost like a Shark Tank kind of experience, except they don't have their final product yet. So students could present their 3 ideas to their classes, whether they do that on Flipgrid, whether they do it on like a shared Google slide, but allowing for them to share their ideas, and then having students give constructive criticism or constructive feedback as to which idea do they think would probably be the best route to take during their design thinking unit. So, obviously, you notice right there's a lot of collaboration taking place, and even you could also hit in your presentation, your speaking and listening standards within that element as well. After we're ideating, we now get into the hands-on part. Now, again, back to my story, quarantine, we're locked down, we can't, move around, our communities. We cannot really exit our homes. And so I wanted to be able to give multiple possibilities to our students as to what a prototype might look like in this setting. In a perfect setting, in an in-class, in-person setting, I would definitely have a makerspace approach take place in my classroom. A lot of times I already had things in my classroom, gathered art materials, glue guns, scissors, construction paper, broken toys from my sons that I would bring in, and then also asking kids to bring in items that are household items that maybe they weren't using anymore. And that was a really great time for them to be able to construct hands-on opportunities that would then eventually produce some type of a prototype. But obviously we were quarantined. Obviously right now many of us are not within an in-face experience. So we need to give opportunities for our students to be able to develop something where they're not going to be able to maybe have access to materials. So I want to go ahead. Well, I think this should suffice right here. But these were for the upper grades, obviously. At the end of, when I get towards the end, I will definitely go in and look at the littles. Like options for the prototype so you can see the differences. But these were things that I thought would be accessible to our students, such as being able to create a website. We are a Google for Education district, so definitely giving the opportunities for students to access Google and using Google Sites, which is so user-friendly for our students, to share what their prototype is. Podcasts, which I absolutely adore, and using like such as the Anchor app, and or really thinking about maybe like a Flipgrid kind of approach or a Screencastify if students don't have the actual app, and or there's probably other programs out there that I don't even know about that have obviously been pushed out there just probably in the last couple months, but giving them the opportunity to speak about their prototype can be definitely impacting. Drawing or designing an advertisement, which has always been one of my favorite things to do in the classroom, especially when we would work on opinion typewriting. Our extension would be for them to create some type of visual advertisement. So either they can draw it or they can design it on some type of a digital platform. We could ask them to record a video. And students nowadays, they are well versed within TikTok and other, social media apps. So having them go ahead and record what they think would be the best solution is also a fun way to share. If you have a student who enjoys to express themselves through the written word, have them write an informational paper and allow them to include data that would help support the solution. I have a blueprint down here of the prototype, so really just drawing what it looks like and labeling all the elements. They could build it if they have things at their home that they're able to piece together, if they're those crafty type of students, and or if they're just kind of like little mini engineers. I know I just talked to a student the other day who enjoys working with his grandfather on building projects. So giving them that opportunity too. And then I thought also for our creative individuals, such as being able to write a story, almost like a narrative based on the assignment that they were, or sorry, the Newsella article that they had previously read. How could they then continue that Newsella article with the key players in it to show how the prototype would come to their solution? And last but not least, giving them the option, that UDL idea, giving them the option to share with you a different idea that they think that would help like with their type of learning abilities, what their passion is. They always come up with better ideas sometimes than we ever do. So allow them to tell you what they want to show you as their prototype. And then the last part, we have the test. Now, this can be obviously a grand experience in your classroom if you were to be face-to-face. So when we're in that virtual setting, we might have to structure it a little bit differently, using our Google Meets or our Zooms as an opportunity for them to present. But this is going to be the opportunity for students to also reflect. They're going to then narrow down what is the name of their design. They're going to go in and hone in as to what materials were used, the why it was important, and how it's going to help. And as they test it, it's really like, obviously if it's not like some type of electronic device, they're not really testing it. More or less, this test is going to be an opportunity for them to share with their classmates their design and talk about how it's going to be helpful for the individual or the situation. And when they're done, this is the great opportunity for them to reflect as to, was this a successful prototype, and do I need to go back to the drawing board? And that's what we always need to remember to instill in our students, that we're never done learning, we're never done creating. We should always go back, reflect, and see how we can refine it to make it better. So with that, we've gone through all of the design thinking approaches, but then again, like I said, that cross-curricular approach is extremely important during this entire process, because if you're going to dive into design thinking full force, remember that we still need to provide the opportunities for our students to have access to the grade level standards. And obviously our core standards at this point of the mathematics and the language arts component is extremely crucial when we're in this virtual realm. We still need to help develop those types of skills. And so when you have that design thinking element and it's connected to some maybe like social topic and or science topic, well, see, you already have your social studies or science hit. Now let's go ahead and make sure we're feeding in that language arts and math. So again, when you're using design thinking, you're always going to fall upon these items to support it. Using close reading, making sure that you're hitting those comprehension strategies. Obviously, using inference strategies. When we looked at our defining stage, we saw that students were able to research a little bit more. We have speaking and listening. We have writing. We have presentation skills, and just multiple means of sources to connect to literature. And then our math, again, going back to the concepts and procedures, which are really the foundation of our mathematical process, and then we can move into our higher thinking, higher level mathematics. For myself, when I wanted to really focus in on math in my curricular day, I wanted to make sure that I had that project-based learning approach with my students quite often. And so then taking those Newsella articles and going ahead and crafting word problems that would reflect the topic was really it was really a very crucial and important part of my classroom instruction. And we can analyze data, we could create performance task-like opportunities, but just making sure we're infusing the language arts and math always. And I wanted to go ahead and go back really quick because these are also hyperlinked slides of examples of previous things that I had done with my students. And so obviously we kind of had this thin slides approach, but I wanted to share this student in particular because I thought he did an extraordinary job of creating this prototype based off of pollution within the water. And so he was able to take some type of article that he had read from Newsella, be inspired by it, go through the design thinking process, and then Tinkercad, which is always a fun tool for students to use to design their prototypes. He went ahead and created that for us, and you'll notice then he has a pretty legit like paragraph right there based on what he felt would be pretty much describing what this type of prototype would do. And then as you can see, it's placed into a shared slide deck, which then gives the opportunity for students to look at what their peers are doing and also possibly inspired if they need that extra support. So that's hyperlinked for that. And this one as well is a hyperlink based off of station rotations that I'm pretty, these were like my fallback for school. Like everything was created within a station rotation unit, and these units would go on for probably like a month or a month and a half. But like I said, because they're cross-curricular, I would have my grade level cross-curricular ELA and math standards included into my station rotations. So those are hyperlinked for you guys to use too at a later time. But again, using the project-based learning and or performance task like element to connect to your design thinking unit is definitely going to be a game changer and just much more relevant and engaging for your students. So those are those. And I think I'm done a little early. So I'm gonna go ahead and like I said, I wanted to go back and I wanted to share in the shared folder my roadmap here. If you notice, I did say it was K through 8th. And so some of those other that was a fourth grade example that I was really showing you guys particularly. But if you go into, say, for example, we'll go to first grade, you'll notice that there is a little bit of a difference based on the structure of what the students are being asked to do. So very simple. A lot of times I would pull from ReadWorks for our littles because obviously we need to make sure that the level of reading is obtainable to our students. And I really think that utilizing imagery, icons, to go ahead and prompt your students into what they should be doing is beneficial, which at this point I would definitely modify in the future if I were working with a first grade group. So for example, where it says like who's in the article and what matters to them, using little icons consistently, that would allow for them to go ahead and know what the prompt is. So we have a short little article, and then it goes into the defining component. And a lot of times I would make sure that I would add in, again, that visual to spark a little bit more detail as to what was the importance of our problem or scenario. This is obviously very the same as the last, but you'll notice here, this is where it was kind of created in a different realm. They only had really about 4 choices or 4 core areas, but then in those core areas, they were able to give more of a simple type of prototype, which could be much more user-friendly for the littles, for sure. Okay. So I feel like I've been rambling. So that's what happens when we're in these situations here at these virtual camps, because I can't see your faces at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to open up this time for any questions, comments, and feel free to unmute yourself, or feel free to go ahead and add something in the chat box if you would like to.
This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, I've been using design thinking, but I think the way you laid it out, it's really good. So I feel like I can use some of your links and your resources for sure. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Yeah,
okay.
It was really, I think, taking a lot of different ideas that I had been inspired by,
yes,
and trying to hone it into something that was actually like doable,
yeah.
You know, and like when closures took place, I really heard a lot of times from a lot of knowledgeable educators, like less is more. And relevance is important. So I wanted to make sure that it was not so overwhelming in the sense of, oh, there's all of these links I have to click and all of this blah, blah, blah. I wanted to be simple, but I wanted it to be engaging as well.
Yeah, it's streamlined and it's usable. So I appreciate the work that you put into it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming. And feel free to share this with your, your fellow educators. Maybe this is something that you could take to a PLC and say like, hey, let's look at our current unit of study that's going to take place, or hey, let's look at this curriculum or unit 2 curriculum that we're currently in, and let's try to see if we can go ahead and, transform these units into a design thinking approach. Because you guys have core curriculum, right? You have Wonders, you have a study sync, you have all of these different literature-based resources. So why not use those? Use the ELA math standards that you need to obviously teach, and then infuse it into this design thinking process as the way that you'll do like an entire unit, which could last almost like a month and a half.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing with the department. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm always trying to think of ways to incorporate design thinking. I think what happens is there are so many mindsets or lenses that you might take when you're designing something. Am I taking a project-based learning mindset? Am I, like one person in the chat shared, a universal design for learning mindset? But what I think about design thinking is it really isn't about either of those, but rather, as I've learned more about this human-centered approach, really thinking about how you can incorporate that design thinking element into what you're doing. So I really appreciate sharing those resources.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think generating everything around that human-centered approach inspires your students and engages them. And at this point, that's really what a lot of what I hear from educators is that it's a hard time to motivate and engage, to get them to show up every day, to those Google Meets, to make sure they're getting those assignments done. So if it's something that they kind of have buy-in into, and they're creating inferences around it, that might be something that they just feel more apt to do.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I like how you said right now, Omar, too, about is it UDL, is it PBL? Well, everything should be UDL, right? Because everything should be geared towards your learner and to their individual needs. And so that's where we definitely, as educators, have to step out of the box and become much more flexible and accommodating, and kind of let go some of that control. So UDL, yes, it is. It should always be. Project-based learning, maybe it's not necessarily PBL, maybe we're going to do a literature approach to it, but it depends on your situation, right?
Right. I think one of the interestings as we think about planning, because one of my spaces of work is in curriculum development. So as we think about this, and we're thinking about what are the goals of the lesson that we're designing. Well, when you think about UDL, PBL, design thinking, we're thinking about how are we going to craft what choices the students have, to the degree that each of those choices will still bring them to the goal of this learning unit. And I think that's where it gets really interesting.
OMG, Omar, that was amazing. That's mind-blowing what you just said. You should write that down. Is that your guys' mission statement in your department?
Not exactly. I just, a lot of reflection.
That's awesome. Okay, let's see if there's many design approaches leave the human characteristic out of design planning. Yeah, they do. But I think again, like we said, basing it on that human-centered approach, you're definitely going to have that buy-in from students. So I think we probably are a little spent at this point. And we're probably ready to go ahead and have a break. Go and get up and have a glass of water, go outside and take some fresh air. But again, I want to say thank you so much for attending today. And if you ever need anything from me, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Hilz to Teach. So feel free to message me. Feel free to follow me. I'll follow you, and we can connect on our PLN. And Omar, thank you so much for being here. You have been awesome, and you're very kind and I loved hearing what you had to say right now. So I appreciate you so much.
Glad to be here. Thanks. And
Wonderful.
I'll stop recording now. All right.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you around.